It starts with a sound, a low, steady hiss against the window, a rhythm that wasn't there a moment ago, and something in your body, before your brain even catches up, just exhales. You weren't tired, you weren't stressed, but the moment the rain starts, something releases. Something ancient. Something that feels less like a reaction and more like a return. There's a word for what you are in this moment. Pluviophile. A lover of rain. A person who finds peace, comfort, and joy when the sky opens up. And if that word sounds like it was made up for an Instagram caption, the science behind it absolutely was not. Because what happens inside your brain when it rains is not poetic. It is neurological. It is evolutionary. And it reaches back millions of years before you, before language, before cities, to a version of your ancestors who needed rain to survive. Here is what your brain is actually doing right now. The sound of rain is classified by acousticians as pink noise. Not white noise, pink noise. White noise gives equal energy to every frequency. Pink noise gives more energy to lower frequencies and less to higher ones. It mirrors the natural acoustic patterns found in wind, rivers, and heartbeats. Dr. Agnieszka Roginska, an audio researcher at New York University, has studied how pink noise interacts with the auditory cortex. What she and others have found is not subtle. Pink noise slows the firing rate of neurons in the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for overthinking, planning, worrying, and self-monitoring begins to quiet, not shut off. Quiet. Like a machine running at a lower gear, your brain waves shift. In a fully alert, stimulated state, your brain runs on beta waves, fast, high-frequency, problem-solving mode. The moment pink noise enters, your brain begins to descend into alpha waves. Alpha is the frequency of calm alertness. You are awake, you are aware, but the noise in your head, the constant chatter of tasks and to-do lists, and anxious replays of conversations, begins to fade. Alpha state is also, crucially, the state most associated with creative insight. It is what happens in the shower. It is what happens on long walks. It is what happens when the rain starts and suddenly you have an idea you have been trying to force for days. You didn't manufacture that insight. Your brain was finally quiet enough to hear it. But the sound is only part of it. There is also the smell. When rain hits dry earth, soil bacteria called actinomycetes release a compound called geosmin. Geosmin is what you are smelling when you say you can smell rain coming. Humans are extraordinarily sensitive to it. Some estimates suggest we can detect geosmin at concentrations as low as 5 parts per trillion. That is more sensitive than sharks detecting blood in water. Dr. Diana Beresford Kruger, a botanist and medical biochemist who has spent decades studying the relationship between plant chemistry and human biology, argues that this sensitivity is not accidental. For early humans, the smell of rain meant water was coming, food was coming, survival was near. Your body learned over hundreds of thousands of years to associate that smell with relief, with safety, with the loosening of a threat. You are not relaxed because rain is pleasant. You are relaxed because your nervous system received a signal it has been trained to trust for 200,000 years. And then there is the light. Overcast skies filter out direct sunlight and reduce the intensity of blue spectrum light that hits your retinas during the day. That blue spectrum suppression gently nudges your brain toward melatonin, not enough to make you fall asleep, but enough to soften the sharp edge of cortisol. Cortisol is your stress hormone. It keeps you alert, vigilant, reactive. Reducing it even slightly creates what psychologists call a parasympathetic shift. Your body moves from fight or flight toward rest and digest. Heart rate drops slightly, muscles loosen, breathing slows. You feel, without trying, calmer. And here is the part nobody talks about. The part that explains why you stop what you are doing, walk to the window, and just stand there. Psychologists call this involuntary attention. Dr. Rachel Kaplan and her husband Stephen Kaplan spent decades developing attention restoration theory at the University of Michigan. Their research distinguishes between directed attention, the kind you use to finish a report, answer emails, follow a conversation, and involuntary attention, the kind triggered by things that are inherently fascinating without demanding anything from you. Rain qualifies perfectly. It moves. It has rhythm. It creates a pattern that is never quite repeated. It demands nothing. It asks no question. It has no message. Your brain watches it the way a child watches fire, completely, effortlessly, without strain. And that effortless attention is restorative. Every minute you stand at the window watching rain is a minute your directed attention systems are quietly recharging, like a battery that was draining all day finally getting plugged in. You are not wasting time at the window. You are repairing something. But here is the counterintuitive part. This same neurological state, alpha waves, softened cortisol, involuntary attention, parasympathetic nervous system activated, has a shadow side. Because the same mechanism that opens you to creativity can, if left undirected, slide you into something else entirely. Drowsiness, inertia, the deep gravitational pull of the couch, the compulsive urge to sleep until it stops raining. You have felt this. The rain starts, you feel peaceful, and then, an hour later, you have watched 6 episodes of something and feel vaguely guilty and groggy and like the day was taken from you. Rain didn't steal your day. Your brain entered a powerful state, and you handed the wheel to the most comfortable option available. Because what alpha state actually is, stripped of all the poetry, is a low-resistance mental environment. Your inner critic is quieter. Your executive function has stepped back. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that usually judges, filters, and second guesses, is running at lower voltage. In that state, whatever you aim your attention at, you will do with unusual ease and unusual depth. If you aim it at a screen, you sink into it completely. If you aim it at a blank page, words come in a way they rarely do. If you aim it at a problem you have been avoiding, your mind moves around it with a flexibility that your normal waking state doesn't permit. The rain does not make you creative or lazy. The rain creates conditions in which you become whichever one you choose. This is why some of the most productive people in history were documented rain workers. Darwin walked in rain. Wordsworth wrote in it. Chopin composed during storms. These were not romantic affectations. They were, whether consciously or not, people who had figured out how to harness a neurological window that opened briefly and closed again when the sky cleared. Because it does close. When the rain stops, blue spectrum light returns, cortisol rises back to baseline, beta waves reassert. The prefrontal cortex powers back up and brings with it the full weight of every unfinished task, every pending decision, every low-level anxiety that was briefly muffled. You feel the shift without naming it. Something sharpens. Something tenses. The world comes back, and you realize the window was only open for a while. A 2021 study published in the Journal of Environmental Psychology found that people who reported feeling positive emotional responses to rain, pluviophiles in the informal sense, scored significantly higher on measures of creative thinking and divergent problem solving when tested during or immediately after rainfall. The researchers noted that this effect was not about preference or personality, it was about state. The rain had changed something physiological, and that physiological change had downstream effects on cognition. People who loved rain weren't simply more creative. They were more creative specifically when it rained, because their nervous systems were leaning into the shift rather than fighting it. You were built to feel what you feel when it rains. The question is what you do with it. Next time the sky darkens and that first hiss of rain hits the window, notice what your body does before your brain decides anything. The shoulders drop. The breath lengthens. Something releases. That is not weakness. That is not distraction. That is 200,000 years of evolutionary chemistry telling you that the threat has passed, that water is coming, that you are, for this moment, safe. Your ancestors stood in the mouths of caves and heard that sound and felt exactly what you feel. They didn't have a word for it either. They just knew. And maybe that is the strangest truth of all. That rain, the thing falling outside your window right now, the thing that delays flights and ruins shoes and floods basements, is also, in the right moment, the closest thing the modern world has to a built-in reset button. A sound old enough to be woven into your nervous system. A smell your body recognizes before your mind does. It starts with a sound, and for a moment, however brief, however fleeting, something in you stops running, stops performing, stops pretending, and finally, like the earth under the first drops, just opens.